On a stormy day, a grocery clerk threw herself into harm's way to save a little girl from a speeding truck. She asked for nothing in return, only soft words to calm the child's trembling. When the girl's wealthy father tried to repay her, she quietly refused. Neither of them could know that this single act of mercy would spark a bond powerful enough to change all their lives forever. Before we begin, tell us, where are you watching from? Drop a comment and let us know. The rain fell in sheets, hammering. The pavement so hard it felt like the whole world was drowning. Wind gusted through the streets, bending traffic lights on their poles and scattering broken umbrellas like abandoned birds. Thunder growled overhead, and lightning carved jagged scars across the blackened sky. And then screeching tires. A scream. In that split second, time seemed to tear apart. A little girl, no more than 6 years old, stood frozen at the edge of the road. Her small yellow raincoat clung to her tiny frame, her pigtails plastered to her wet cheeks as her wide eyes locked on the hulking truck barreling through the intersection. Its horn blared, a monstrous hollow sound swallowed by the storm. But before the child could vanish beneath the weight of steel and rubber, another sound rang out, quick, desperate footsteps splashing through puddles. A figure leaped forward. Strong arms scooped the girl into safety just as the truck roared past, showering them both with icy spray. They collapsed onto the curb, the woman's chest heaving, her dark skin shining under the rain. She clutched the trembling child to her chest, whispering soft words, her voice gentle despite her own racing heartbeat. "It's okay, baby. You're safe now. I've got you." The little girl sobbed into her shoulder, gripping the grocery clerk's apron like a lifeline. The storm didn't matter anymore. The danger didn't matter. For that moment, all that existed was protection and a stranger's fierce love for a child she had never met. What she didn't know was that just a few yards away, through the tinted window of a sleek black car that had pulled to a sudden stop, a man had seen everything. His hands still clenched the steering wheel so hard his knuckles were white. His chest ached with the terror of nearly losing his daughter, his vision blurred with the miracle of her survival. And he would never forget the woman who had made that miracle possible. Her name was Lena Carter. She was 32, working 2 jobs to keep her tiny apartment and to send money to her mother, who was battling illness back home in Georgia. Life hadn't been kind to her. It seemed like every time she took a step forward, the world shoved her 2 steps back. Rent, medical bills, bus fare, groceries. Each day was a new struggle, but she faced it with quiet dignity. Lena didn't complain. She showed up. She worked. She smiled when customers ignored her, frowned when they treated her badly, and yet she always found a kind word for the elderly lady who came in short on change, or the young cashier drowning under her first day's mistakes. But there were nights, when the store was closed and the city was quiet, that she sat alone at her small kitchen table, staring at the stack of bills, wondering if her life would ever be more than survival. And then the storm came. That day, she had just finished her shift and was walking home with groceries in hand when fate threw her into the path of a little girl named Sophie. She didn't think, she simply moved. Saving Sophie wasn't heroism to her. It was instinct, compassion, the kind of selflessness that came from a heart used to giving even when it had little left to give. So when the black car pulled up beside her and a tall man in an expensive suit stepped out, Lena thought he was just another stranger passing by. She didn't recognize his name, though almost everyone else in the city did. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice shaky, urgent. Lena nodded, still cradling the child. "She's fine, just scared." He bent down, pulling Sophie into his arms. Relief washed over his face like sunlight through storm clouds as he kissed her damp hair again. And again, "My God, Sophie, my sweet girl." Only then did he look back at Lena. Their eyes met, and for the first time he saw her, not as the grocery clerk she was, not as the drenched stranger before him, but as the reason his world had not shattered. "I owe you everything," he whispered, but Lena shook her head. "You don't owe me anything, just take her home safe." She gave a small smile to Sophie, brushing wet strands from her face. "Be careful next time, okay, sweetheart?" And with that, Lena turned to walk away, her grocery bag tearing. Slightly under the rain, spilling an apple into the gutter, she picked it up and kept walking, her back straight despite the storm. The man, Richard Hale, a billionaire businessman whose face graced magazines and whose empire stretched across industries, stood there speechless. He wasn't a man used to hearing no. Money solved everything in his world. But money couldn't buy what he had just witnessed, and it left him haunted. The next day, Lena returned to work, tired but determined as always. She didn't notice the sleek black car parked outside the store. She didn't notice the suited men making quiet calls, tracking down her name, her shift schedule, her address. She just stocked the shelves, smiled at customers, and rang up groceries, never imagining her life had shifted forever. Richard came in that evening. The store fell silent when he entered. Everyone knew who he was, the kind of man who didn't shop for himself, the kind of man who didn't belong in a corner grocery. Yet there he was, his tall frame filling the narrow aisles until he stopped in front of Lena. "You're the woman who saved my daughter." Lena froze, embarrassment flooding her cheeks. Yes, sir, but really, it was nothing." "Nothing?" His voice cracked, anger and gratitude warring inside him. "You risked your life for her, for Sophie. I can't just walk away from that." He pulled out a checkbook, scribbling numbers that made Lena's eyes widen in disbelief. "I don't want your money," she said firmly, pushing it back to him. "Please, I didn't do it for that." He stared at her like she was speaking another language. In his world, everyone wanted something, an investment, a favor, a handout, but she wanted nothing, and that nothing became everything to him. Days turned into weeks. Richard tried again and again to repay her kindness. Flowers, gift cards, job offers, each one met with the same gentle refusal. Lena didn't want charity. She didn't want to be indebted to anyone. All she wanted was to live her quiet, hard-working life with dignity. But Sophie wanted something else entirely. The little girl never stopped talking about Lena. She begged her father to take her to the grocery store, just to see the lady who saved me. She drew crayon pictures of Lena holding her hand. She dreamed about her, asked about her, clung to the memory like it was stitched into her very soul. And slowly, Richard found himself drawn back, not out of obligation, but out of something deeper he couldn't yet name. He began to talk to Lena, not as a benefactor, but as a man curious about the woman who had changed his life. He learned about her mother's illness, about her love for books she could never afford, about the way she used to dream of becoming a teacher before life's hardships buried that dream under responsibility. She learned about his loneliness, the emptiness wealth couldn't fill, the wound left by his wife's passing years ago. What started as gratitude became friendship. What began as chance grew into something neither of them expected, but not everyone approved. Some whispered behind Lena's back, accusing her of chasing a rich man. Others in Richard's world sneered at the idea of him lowering himself to a grocery clerk. The tabloids spun cruel headlines, and Lena, proud and private, almost walked away. "I don't belong in your world," she told him one night as they stood beneath the city's skyline. "People like me, we're invisible to people like you. I don't want to be your charity." "Case, Richard?" He took her hands, his voice steady, his eyes fierce. "You're not invisible, you never were. You're the only person who's ever looked at me and seen a man instead of a bank account. And I won't let you go." For the first time in her life, Lena felt seen, not as a worker, not as a burden, but as a woman worth loving. The bond between the three of them, Lena, Richard and little Sophie, grew stronger each day. Challenges came, of course. They faced gossip, doubt, and Lena's own fear of opening her heart. But together, they fought through it. And when Lena's mother grew too weak to fight her illness alone, Richard quietly paid for the best medical care, not because Lena asked, but because love had made her pain his own. One act of mercy in The rain had set into motion a chain of events none of them could have predicted. A little girl's life was saved, a man's heart was healed, and a woman who had spent her life unseen discovered she was worthy of everything she had once thought out of reach. So, if you're listening right now, remember this. Kindness matters. The world will tell you that only money, power, and fame can change lives. But sometimes it's the quiet choices, the selfless leap into danger, the refusal to ask for reward, the gentle words spoken to a frightened child, that shift the course of destiny. Lena Carter never planned to be a hero. She was just a woman walking home in the rain. But her courage became the bridge to a new life, a new family, and a love that proved more powerful than fear, more enduring than storms. And maybe, just maybe, that same kind of love is waiting for you too.